material.
Right, material and color.
Yeah, I was more thinking material. Okay.
So again, once again, yes would be approval of the non-standard building with color and metal construction and match the other building. No would be not accept the non-standard building. Roll call vote.
Burgess,
Yes.
Poe,
Yes.
Penfield,
Yes.
Bryant,
Yes.
Mayfield,
yes,
Johnson,
Yes.
Irwin.
Yes. Okay. Second item is the waiver on sidewalk requirement. Rick, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so because, as with any commercial development, you know, there's the improvements that have to do with the master transportation plan when it comes to roadways that they abut. Since this comes up to the Highway 5, that being a state highway, that's not something that we get involved with on the improvements, except for the addition of pedestrian uses. So along Highway 5, we've made others install the multi-use trail that goes along there and the sidewalks. And so that's why this was a requirement of this project, was to help benefit the area up and down Highway 5 by having pedestrian access.
What's the highway department plans on widening Highway 5 from Alexander Road to River Road time frame?
I believe it's something that obviously they're actively looking at. I think with the situation that they have, obviously just now improving the current section that they're improving and under construction.
They're currently surveying all of it right now.
I think it's something they're looking at doing. I don't think it's something that's received funding.
Cody, how far is it down to Bryant Parkway from there? Where there is sidewalk?
That is Bryant Parkway right there, the intersection.
Okay.
That would be the big red, if you can see.
Right.
Yeah, the Big Red was one of the developments that came in, and they constructed the multi-use trail that goes along Highway 5 and north and south on Bryant Parkway. I believe maybe we constructed the multi-use trail running north and south as far as the Bryant Parkway project,
We did.
and they constructed the portion of it that was on Highway 5.
Because it was part of the Parkway Access Management Plan that the city and the school paid for.
Right.
I just think, I mean, it's on their radar. You know, who knows when they'll do it. They don't have the funding.
Right.
They're surveying it, they're studying it, they're designing it. You know, based on what the meeting I was in was told, I mean, they want to get ahead of the right of way on that one. It's easier to get it now than later. There's a whole lot of residential homes that probably won't be commercial because they're very, you know, they're larger homes. And it's not large enough to tear them down. I mean, their highest and best use is going to be a residential home. Where are you going to connect to with that sidewalk? We didn't make them do it at the time and on that Natalie Drive. There's no sidewalk on 5, is there?
Not around Natalie Drive, no.
And there's no sidewalk. All those are single family across the street. And, you know, up further, 5 going towards Big Red, on that side of the road, they're all larger single family, which probably, I mean, I would assume would get torn down and redeveloped recently. It just seems crazy to have a sidewalk nowhere.
Wait,
And their business isn't like Big Red, they're not gonna have any impact on that sidewalk.
you just had little spaces on the front of the building, so it's gonna be.
Yeah, the requirement of the sidewalk is one that, you know, through the public outreach that we've done, through the public meetings, one of the goals of not just the master transportation plan, but the zoning code and the city in general is to help build a wider pedestrian access across the city. So, you know, that's why that requirement is there, is to try to help with that. I know the term sidewalk to nowhere gets thrown out a lot, but, you know, these sections of sidewalk can eventually be constructed into something. And, you know, as far as building a sidewalk to somewhere, you know, each one of those sections has to be done at some point.
I agree. agree with you, Truett, but I watched them tear the sidewalk in front of my office out to rebuild a new one after we paid to put it in. I mean, it's foolish. I mean, if it was benefiting the subdivision, they were doing it. They also aren't developing the whole frontage. I mean, they could skirt the rules and sell it to another LLC and come in and have a private road to a separate development. We've allowed the school to build pavilions behind their operations. We've allowed other people to build buildings, I'm not gonna name them in here right now, on I-30, accessory buildings that didn't have to put sidewalks down those areas. I mean, I just think they're building a building there's no benefit to the sidewalk being there.
Well, and with the sidewalk provisions that were put in the zoning code, any building that gets permitted to be built has the requirement of sidewalks on it. So, I mean, that's why that's another reason where the requirement comes in. It's not just the transportation plan, but the zoning code requires those sidewalks as well. So it's something that even any permitted building would have to have it.
So can we go up here just a little bit? Oh, can we drag down or, other way?
Go towards the rock.
So we're talking about this site on this piece of property right here,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
which has no frontage.
That's right.
Sorry, I don't see a sidewalk issue. It's a separate piece of property that has no frontage.
Well, it's owned by the same owner and the
Yes,
same.
they know it's split different. In fact, they're coming in right now, that's what?
Well, it's one of the things that we're changing with the commercial zoning code, which we'll get into here in a little bit.
But, you don't have whatever frontage of that lot,
That's,
concrete, it's basically gonna come, it's gonna be widened sooner than later.
We hope.
It will.
it'll be widened before you would ever have any development connect to that sidewalk.
Okay. Any other questions on sidewalk requirements? Waiver? If not, if you vote yes, you're approving the waiver for the sidewalk. If you vote no, you are not approving the waiver for the sidewalk. Roll call vote, please.
Burgess,
Yes.
Poe,
Yes.
Penfield,
Yes.
Brunt,
Yes.
Mayfield,
no,
Johnson,
Yes.
Irwin.
Yes. So, it has been approved for a waiver for non-standard building, also approved waiver for no sidewalk requirement. Next item, the J.D. Riley. It has been removed at this time. We will go ahead and move to the director's report.
Yes, and then I'm going to let Colton present on the changes to the master transportation plan. He's been working on mapping those out. I think he's done a really good job. Another plug for him, he's been working on a restaurant map for the city of Bryant. I don't know if y'all have seen that or not, but it is out there. It shows all the restaurants in Bryant. It shows their information when they're open and what they're doing. So if they're doing carry out, take out, delivery, or if they are doing dining. So all of that is mapped out there. So anytime you're looking for a place to eat and can't decide, seems like I'm always in that situation. Feel free to go to that map and you can see how the different restaurants in Bryant.
Is it under the planning and development?
So if you just go to the City of Bryant website, it should be at the bottom of there in that helpful link section. It is also located on our page. I believe it's been pushed out once or twice on our social media pages, so you can find it there as well.
What do you click on, city what?
City restaurant.
Very bottom.
Fast, man, very fast, the numbers fall.
He's done a really good job.
Well, that's awesome. How long every day you update it, once a week?
I try to update it just about once a week, whenever I get some more information from a lot of the restaurants. That does show all the restaurants there in the city limits of Bryant.
There's some good ones looking.
All right, so as Drew was saying, we were working on a few of the updates to the master street plan. I do have a poster right here in front, it's in front of all you guys. But I do have that, and I also have it pulled up here on the screen. Some of the changes we made aren't very large changes, just a few here and there to update some of the changes we've already done with some of the subdivisions and commercial developments that have come through, that have already been approved. Such as the Bryant Parkway, the new route for the parkway is shown on here in the black and purple dashed line that kind of comes out around the airport. The green dashed lines are roads that we are proposing to remove from the plan just due to changes or roads that we've seen that we don't think will have a major impact or won't be able to accomplish in the future, such as the connection from Royal Lane over there to Debswood. We've changed that a little bit, and actually proposed a connection from, I believe, I forget which street that one is right there, but it connects over to Dell Drive instead of going from Royal all the way to Debswood.
That's Ridgecrest, I believe, isn't it?
Evans Loop, so the connection will go from Evans Loop to Dell Drive.
Well, that's the right of way we already have, right?
Correct.
A few other changes we are proposing, down here on County Road 1, making this a industrial collector.
Where are you located?
This is going to be south of Hill Farm Road and the airport, just on the other side of the new school. It's the yellow and black dashed line. That area right there, we kind of foresee some new industrial development occurring in the near future. So with that, we'd like to have a plan to expand that area, expand the roadway to withstand the collector or the weight of heavy trucks and equipment through that area. We also, move up north a little bit more. So on the north side of the city,
Okay, you got the John's Wood and Screw Creek.
yes. So that right there, the green dash line is what we had through that area originally. We do have, some projects in the works that are showing a, connection through here. We thought the connection would actually go through this major lot that was rezoned not too long ago, instead of cutting across these other lots here. We also proposed a local road going north from Johns Wood connecting into Hunter Lee over there in the Andres Wood subdivision in that area too. Like I said, we just moved that over a little bit there to line up with that intersection versus going through the middle of already existing subdivision lots there in Andres Woods.
Over there on Boone Road, Mount Carmel and all that area.
Yes. So this intersection, or this area here, we kind of just cleaned up the lines to make a little bit better connections in that area. As you know, that property there next door, it says Boone Road, probably won't be developed in the very near future, just because of deed restrictions for that property. So we kind of modified the roadways there to kind of reflect the changes, being able to have connections through that area without having to use that as a major road.
So you're connecting off of Woodland.
Yes, it would connect Woodland and Boswell. Right now, we do know that is a golf course, but we're thinking long-term. That would be a great area for a collector to run east-west across town and connect Alcoa area all the way over to
You see anything else on the south side of the freeway, commissioners? That's been changed?
True, we had talked in DRC Zoom about, we had a conversation on Dale. We talked about discussing that, is this time to do it? We talked about downgrading that road because of some half-street improvement issues with the user that was in. And then you and I had a subsequent conversation with an idea of maybe some segmented changes to it, where you kept it as the same classification up towards the intersection, so if it developed, you could get your stacking, turn lane and all that, but as you got back towards Ridgecrest, you could downgrade it to keep it in good shape.
Yeah, that's a pretty, you know, I was looking at, I did talk to Cruz as well. That's a pretty, Dale Drive is what's been developed by the Lowe's development is wider, it seems to be, than what Dale Drive is from Railroad Road to the new development.
I did find that too. You know they built that road, don't you? Lowe's, and it was part of that development. It's part of their, I don't know if they ever dedicated to the city, but it's part of their restrictions, and they have control over what happens in their document that they recorded on that road.
And it seems like it's wider than what Bryant built from Railroad Road to that location.
So is there, I mean, is that something that we need to talk about tonight here?
Yeah, we can. I think what's happening tonight is having those conversations, and then, you know, if we need to make adjustments from that, we can do that. You know, as far as, I think what you were talking about with the transitioning, you know, I think when looking at a road from a local to a collector to an arterial, I think it's important to obviously look at the amount of traffic that's occurring there on there, and then what's the possibility of having, you know, what's the traffic of the future in those areas. And I think that's why it's important to look at those sections that are specifically commercial areas, that are high residential areas, and leading away from those. You know, usually the way that system's supposed to work is your local streets be your collectors, and then on to your minor arterials.
Most of the traffic's coming off of Ridgewood, most of the people with residential, because that's where a lot of duplexes.
There's a lot of cut-through traffic.
Yes.
From, you know, from above, you go above Ridgecrest, Laura Lane. There's just a ton of traffic on Ridgecrest.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were looking at downgrading Ridgecrest and Dale, weren't we?
We had talked about it. We had talked about it due to the fact that on the west side of Ridgecrest, that's a big ditch that's coming off of a detention area behind Lowe's. Goes into whatever that creek is called, Creek.
Yeah, that was part of the conversation. You know, I think a point that was just made was, you know, that's used as a cut through. There's a lot of traffic on that road, and I think that's why it's designated as a collector for the future. Because obviously, if you have a lot of traffic now, from, you know, what I see, I don't think Bryant's going to stop growing anytime soon. And that's why this plan's intact, and that's why we've got it, is to help alleviate some of those traffic problems that we have through the city. And obviously, you know, I think it's more important to have effective ways to travel across the city, effective routes, more than more asphalt. More asphalt doesn't always mean move more cars.
But redevelopment builds those wider roads. It appears that it's
For
all,
the city,
sorry,
for the city in some circumstances.
but the majority of the only places left developed are right there on Dale. The rest of it, I mean, where does it redevelop? Is the city gonna widen the road all the way from the service road and complete that loop?
Yeah, I mean,
What's the likelihood? And I think it's a cut through for that group of people that's already living there.
Mhm.
I think it is important to figure out how to put a left turn lane down at Dale. That's where the problem is.
so where would you recommend to start or stop the collector?
I think you give yourself enough room at Reynolds, this is my personal opinion, you give yourself enough room at Reynolds to get your left-hand turn lane and adequate stacking, so that when Reynolds is bogged down, I don't know, I'm not a traffic expert, but you can get, what, 10 plus cars there? We have 20, 200, 300 feet back, 400 feet back.
It's almost impossible if you're on Bill Drive and you're trying to turn, you want to turn right and people in front of you turn left.
You're there.
Yes, you're not going anywhere. You can't back up Most of the time people come down Dale, they cut through the little parking lot, go over to the Chick-fil-A light.
That's what I do. I don't
Yeah.
ever turn left.
And it's very dangerous there because that road in that parking lot is not as big as the Dale Drive and Cedars.
How deep is that Wendy's or?
Yeah.
How deep is Wendy's from front to back there?
You have Little Cedars on the north side, south side, and you have Wendy's on the north side.
Can you make a right turn only on that street, since it is a
It'd be nice,
dangerous place
it'd
to
be,
turn left?
you could sign up and
They can still turn.
they can still go turn left.
I could do it here, go on Safari. So keep going to the back of the hotels, that's 230, so that's about,
You're looking at about 500 feet from that first spot.
Now, the people who had building that was building property on the south part of Dale, it's coming all the way up to the motel, correct?
no, he stops at that line right
Right there?
No,
Oh, it's not, not over that next line?
no,
there. I think they own to that line, do they?
I thought it was also,
no, it's
Oh,
not.
it may be that 1.4.
I thought it went all the way up.
I think it, yeah, because it's 5 acres, but that, oh, but then the 5 had the right of way the city had at it. Yeah, it doesn't go all the way to that.
So is that 1.54 not part of it? Okay.
I don't know what that distance is to answer your question, but I think it's whatever it takes to,
We'll take that recommendation, and it sounds like there's some response from it, and we can go in there and modify
Because I
something.
don't think they were gonna put a light there at Dale Drive and Reynolds.
The state will not warrant's not the right word. Probably won't schedule a light there because how close it would be to the other light.
Correct. So a turning lane would be ideal if we could figure out how to get it in there.
Yeah.
right?
Um,
You're looking at a downgrade and a potential leaving a segment up that's the same right there, correct?
Correct.
So since we're talking about flow, go down here to the end of Dell. This turn is always confusing to drivers. They don't know whether to stop or to go. It's just a little janky.
Yeah.
I just pointed out.
Um,
I'm not saying it has to change as part of this plan, just in general.
Well, and I think something to go ahead and point out, there is the taking off of that road there. Can you go back to the proposal?
Is it gonna go over here to show
Yeah, the one that goes over towards, I think it's technically,
what this is showing?
I think it changes from Shove in that short little leg, but that's basically Shove there, yes. The reason why that was taken off there is the city currently owns that piece of property. So if we wanted to go through there and put a road there, we wouldn't have that ability because it's the city property anyway. And I think if that ever changed hands, I think this would be something we'd go back and address again. But we're not sure. The way it looks right now is that you're running that road right behind that subdivision. I don't think that's necessarily where that road would sit. There's also a lot of difficulties with that piece of property because of the amount of floodplain, drainage that goes through there. So it's a difficult piece of property to really do much with. I still think that those connections, doing some sort of connection like that is warranted, but there's also the deletion of the section from basically Highway Reynolds Road and Roya back there. And when you start looking at the feasibility of trying to get that road in between those businesses and out of the floodway, it becomes basically impossible.
Because the
That's not
city
including-
owns that easement from Evans Loop that possibly to connect to Dale.
Yeah, so the roadway that's shown right there, that's the easement that the city currently owns to put a road. So that's city right of way that the road can go in on.
You're leaving that one on there, putting,
Yeah, that one's getting modified to be put on there.
Good.
It didn't look like that in the old draft, but it looks like that on the new.
Yeah, the original showed a connection from Evans Loop to the connector that was from Roya to Debswood, or shown there. There wasn't a connection from that road north to Dell until you went down to the corner there. But the city already owns that right of way, so that's why we, show it the way we do right now.
Okay. So, kind of clear on that. Can you roll over to, what was the other one we talked, Bishop? We had a conversation with our applicant for, did we through it?
Oh, for the, car lot?
Bishop. Oh, Bishop Drive, I understand.
Yeah, Bishop at the intersection, we had some discussions about a downgrade on that one too.
I was thinking of the park, but yes,
Right there,
For the, I-30, those two?
yeah, it was an applicant that was applying, he's not, I think they're coming in the next meeting, but
yeah, well, they were supposed to be here tonight for another item, but it's the same location. And
we got to talking about that road and the possibility, and it's, I mean, looks like the Bishop, I mean, I was looking at segmenting it somewhere through there, because you turn into where those apartments are already developed and the subdivisions, and a little bit further south.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to do the same, have the same sort of conversation about Bishop, I think it's from Roya north, probably sees quite a bit of traffic because of the amount of traffic Roya sees getting off of Reynolds there at the light. Now, Bishop south of Roya, I think is a different animal. There are the apartments there that do have, drive quite a bit of traffic, but I don't think it would be near to the extent of what's occurring from Roya north. Because of the Roya north, you can see a really clear delineation of the commercial area from the residential standpoint.
I think that would alleviate a lot of traffic coming on to Reynolds if they could shortcut through there.
Well, I think it goes against what we're trying to do. If we encourage it to be wide, and it's a residential, high-dense residential area, why do you want it to be a cut-through?
Yeah, and
From Cricket to Roy.
I think another thing to sort of think about in
Talk about Royal North.
when we're talking about this section specifically is that, there's the process of doing a connection, extending Sheep over to Cricket. And that's something that the city's actively working on, so taking Sheep and making it further. I only bring that up not to necessarily go one way or the other with it, but just to understand that Cricket is probably going to see an even more influx of traffic when that connection occurs.
Correct.
So it'll probably be, because at that point, you'll be able to travel the longest distance, east and west, south of the interstate, without getting on Boone by taking Sheep and Cricket.
Correct.
I think,
They'd be coming off the Spring Hill overpass.
yeah, I think we're all pretty excited about that.
When do you think that will start?
So we're still working through, we've got a grant for that right now, the design on it, so we're still working through that design process. That's one that is going through the state as well. So we're still
Well, it'd be
working.
basically the same as what Sheep is now, correct?
Correct. So we're going to use that same design, or very similar design. I don't want to say the same.
Maybe we could get China on the go back home without having to go all the way down the
Okay.
But Cricket's been upgraded a little, pretty recently.
And some sections of Cricket are, I think, a little bit more upgraded than others. I think some of them have seen some half-street improvements, or just improvements in general in that area, and others haven't. But Cricket's definitely one that I would not recommend downgrading, because I do think it's going to have that degree of traffic.
I agree with that.
And in correct preparation for the connection, it has to stay.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So Sheep to Cricket's on the plan.
Yeah. Yes. The
Yeah.
next one, you could probably say near future.
Define your future.
Yeah. One other remark I just wanted to make, just to make sure that we're all clear and we understand it, having to do with Bryant Parkway. So that is the new route for Bryant Parkway, what is shown there. So that's taking the old route off, putting the new route on there. So that's an important step for us. And it's been something we've been holding off until we were really sure where that route was going to be.
Can you zoom in on that, please?
And just to give you, I'll go ahead and do a short update on Bryant Parkway. There has been some changes recently. That road, yes. So, you know, we received a $1.5 million grant from Metro Plan. So that has changed some things within the approval process. So to this point, the FAA has been the lead agency on that. That's now transitioning over to the Federal Highway Department. At least for the environmental section of the review. So they'll be handling them, and RDOT will be handling that as we move forward. Because those are federal funds and the Metro Plan funds all go through RDOT, and sort of this circle of events that occurs. So now we're starting to go through that process of getting those approved so that we're good to use those funds, at 1.5 million. But we're still going through with design. We've hit the 60% mark. Had a really good conversation with the Airport Commission the other night. I thought that went well. They have agreed on the right-of-way and where the road's going to go and the access points. So, and what that shows you there is actually we took off the road that goes through the airport. So this is the airport road. We've taken that road off because we don't see it as a road that needs to become a city street. It still can be their road. It's their road. It's their private road to do whatever they want with, but it's not one that needs to be on our master transportation plan because we don't feel like we only want roads on your transportation plan that you want to become public streets or that are already public streets. So that's not on there. And with the new design, they will get access directly off the parkway. So that's what that shows there.
True, will Southeast Third, that road kind of goes nowhere now, will it?
Yeah, and the road actually isn't quite as long as was shown there.
Right.
And what we're looking at, and we'll continue to look at, is a connection on the parkway, be it your third or fourth. And that's one thing.
There's a lot of people living, you know, in the hidden forest back in there.
Yeah.
Have to zigzag out, you know, real that would save them.
Yeah,
That would be a good thing to add.
with the initial talks about Bryant Parkway, that was a connection that wasn't comfortable at making at the time. We're preparing to have a connection like that at a certain time period when we feel that the community and the neighborhood's ready for that connection. I think that's something that we could look at making.
It wouldn't be very hard to do.
No, yeah, specifically off the 4th Street. 3rd Street is mostly residential on both sides, so I don't know if you want to put a connection on 3rd. But 4th Street has commercial at the front and commercial on one side of it.
Right.
So it's a little further to make the road, but it would be a little bit easier to revamp that road and to possibly extend it down to the parkway.
What is this street in front of us here?
This is 1st Street, Southwest First.
Southwest Third.
Should know what my own address is.
Point at fourth, so they'll know where the corner,
So
where.
4th is right here.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a connection that goes.
That'll open up a lot of availability to people getting out of that area.
Bryant Parkway is going to be a great addition for the city, and it's really going to change traffic flows in ways that we can't even predict.
Just to show to Radar, it's amazing how much traffic is on it now, but also how many people are using the trail.
There's a lot of use of the trail, and I've actually been somewhat surprised of it. I know recently, with all the COVID stuff happening and we going through that as a community, you know, I thought there was a lot of use of the dog park, and I thought most people were parking there to use the dog park, and I think a lot of them weren't.
Yeah.
But you can drive by the park now and see 4 or 5 cars, and a lot of those people are just going up and down that trail there.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Up to the bridge, where the trail ends to nowhere.
Yeah, and you see some people bear the bridge and go across it, and then, you know, get on the sidewalk that's on the other side of there, and then on through to the rest of the trail that was constructed with the north section of Bryant Parkway. You know, I think at one point it'd be nice to try to go back to RDOT once maybe we get some of these projects that we're working on out of the way and see about doing some sort of pedestrian access across that bridge, or if we got to do something else. But I really think if we could do something across there, especially with how much further we're going to extend the trail south and the eventual coming of the Southwest Trail, I think that'll be important. One thing to mention about trails, because I'm glad you brought that up, is that we will come back after we do this with a trail map. So by adding and deleting some roads and modifying them, we also changed some of where the trails will be. But found, I thought it was best to go ahead and nail down where the streets are, and then we can talk about trails more after that. The only other thing that I wanted to point out to y'all specifically has to deal with the two roads to the north. On the old plan, Midland Road extended north. We have deleted that, and we have added a section onto the Hilldale. Added a section onto that to head north. And this was part of that decision that I brought to y'all previously about, at some point, a possible connector from Little Rock. Obviously, I would not classify that as near future, but something that we need to plan for and be prepared for if it occurs. And so that was one of those things that they requested, was to change that on our transportation plan. So that's what this does.
So that site is better than the green dotted line site.
Yeah, what we found, and I think the basis for that decision was really needed to have something where that road empty outs into needs to have a really good interstate access. So Midland Road, although it's probably the better constructed road right now, doesn't have interstate access. So all the traffic that would come down through there, so, you know, I think their estimates were like 15,000 cars a day or something like that, would then just buckle at the highway.
Yeah, I recall that conversation, but I was just
Okay.
asking about, this lines up, you're changing because of what's happening here, not because of topography up in here.
Well, I think there was some additional topography, not in our county, but in the county to the north of us, that made that road even better for them than the other choice. But that didn't affect necessarily our decision or where it was in Saline.
Well, that road's coming out of, I believe it's West Little Rock would be optional, would be Raleigh Road, over by Promenade.
And it'd be in that area. There's a long way for that road to get there before we get here.
I think it was down here or something. Okay. Anything else north? We got something on Woody Drive area?
Yeah, so the Woody Drive area has to do with that. Really, it was a adjustment y'all had already made as a commission, and it's just reflecting that on the map. You remember there was a project coming in there where that y'all made the decision to not require the road, mainly because that section from Woody to Hilltop is all owned by the Memorial Park there, and you know, there would be no development in that area that they're going to do that would require that road. So that road really became not feasible. And if you don't have that road, there's not a really good point of having the road from Woody to 5. So that was a decision I made maybe about a year ago. This is reflecting that on the map. And if you remember with that project as well, you know, they're doing the improvements on Woody Drive, which I'm excited to say did get approved from the State Department that needed to approve that. I forget which one it was now, but
Woody and Highway 5 connection that we're talking about, that project.
yes. So
So that project's still on plan, building that facility there?
yes,
Right here.
last I talked to them, it was.
There wasn't a Department of Human Services.
It was Human Services. Corrections was in my head, and I knew that was not it. But I had the opportunity to do a phone conference with the Department of Human Services Board, and they approved the movement of that road.
Good deal. Get rid of that D, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, so it'll be much closer to like a true intersection instead of what's there currently, which is pretty dangerous. It'll also improve that roadway right there, which I think is.
Okay. Anything else north side?
I believe that's all the changes. There are more changes on the south side than the north side.
What is it, line that comes up, Commonwealth?
Oh, Commonwealth, that's that was on the map previously. So extending that roadway all the way up to Hilltop.
Which is really, yeah, part of the development there, isn't
Yeah, so
it? T and D.
the Midtown plan has a road that goes through there. And to a certain degree, that would be what would drive the development there anyway, in the overlay, the development district.
Okay.
Did we have anything on the horizon for Commonwealth North?
Continuing it north,
Yeah.
that'll just come with the development of Midtown.
That's a little janky there, to have a lot of traffic on it.
Making a turn like that.
Yeah. Like that used to be.
Oh, yeah,
Bring back the fountain on it. Anyway,
that is a challenge.
yeah, I'm just not excited about a lot of traffic in that area, of course.
Yeah.
Not my bad. Clear, close? No, it's just not really a good spot for traffic.
Yeah, I mean, you never want a ton of traffic buzzing through your residential area. And unfortunately, Reynolds Road deaded it right there and wasn't continued. I think things could have gone differently.
Trent, is there anything new on Midtown? I mean, is there anything?
We're working with them through, getting started again. We're hopeful that happens, quickly. I think that's what we're
We're
trying to
looking
do.
at revamping that
Yeah,
bill of assurance that.
Yeah. I think that's part of the process, is going through back through that bill of assurance. With the bill of assurance, that's more of an agreement between the property owners,
Right.
than it is with the city. It's something that we look over and needs to meet a couple of our specifications, but for the most part, that's an agreement between them. Now, there's the bill of assurance, and then there's the overlay district,
Right.
which are, I think sometimes get confused about being the same thing. They're two separate documents, and really will require two separate things. So I think a lot of the building requirements that had to be gone through, and still are for that area, are through the bill of assurance. And from what I understand, the group that's working with them are working with us, and working with the property owners and the existing POA there, to help move that along. And yeah, hopefully get some houses built out there.
Good question. Anybody else have any questions?
Good work.
Yes. Okay, what about the proposed commercial zoning changes? You want to do that, or you want to, it's 10 after 7 at this time?
Are you telling me to be quick? Here's what I'll say, because I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but it's something that now that hopefully we're getting on the other side of COVID and we're coming back, and we're able to have some meetings like this. I think it's important that the first thing we do is focus in on this, because there's a couple of developments that are really riding on this changing. I think we need to be sensitive to that. And, we haven't changed a whole lot with this. I know there's certain commissioners that are looking to put some input in on this map. And what I say to that is we're open. We want to have those conversations, and we want to change those things. I think we need to take advantage of this opportunity to get this map right now, so that we don't continue to have rezonings in the future. That being said, we will have them, and this isn't going to be perfect, and we'll come back and make adjustments to it as we go. But the zoning code that goes with this is extensive, but I think it's easier than what we've currently got. I think it makes a lot more sense than what we've currently got. I've already received some feedback from council members on this, and what I'd like to request is that we hold a workshop, which is something that we've talked about on this in the past, before the next planning commission meeting. So if we could do it right before, we do workshops with council, and I think that's sometimes it's work. We could also pick a new date to do a workshop on, but that would just be another time that we all have to get together. But if we could do a workshop on it, and I think really dig into it, And then also invite council to be a part of that, because of course, they're gonna be part of the decision-making process on this as well. I think it's really important for everybody to have a good understanding of what we're going to, and then also have multiple points for people to make public comments and be involved in this process, even as we go through what we're going through right now.
You talk about a workshop, like our meeting starts at 6, you talk about 5:30?
Yeah, maybe 5:30, and going, digging into it real quick. And then, because what I'd like to do, if y'all would be agreeable to it, is to do something like that, and then actually go ahead and post for the public hearing to happen that same night. So if you felt like it was in a comfortable place to also host the public hearing that night, of course, that does not mean you have to make a decision on it that night. But we could at least start that process of going through that.
Personally thinking, I mean, I'd be willing to do it. 5:30, you get everybody settled down, you get rolling, you're not gonna hit 6. You probably need a little intermission in there anyway. I mean, I'd be for start at 5, trying to get through it, and then, allow time for people to come in. 'Cause when they start coming in, it's gonna disrupt the public hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, the workshop.
Yeah.
That'd be a thought.
Is that possible for all commissioners to be able to make that at 5 o'clock?
Most of it.
Yeah.
Dr. Mayfield?
He signed off.
We did.
He texted me, he signed off.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Lance, because 30 minutes is not going to.
Well, you wanna shut it down just a few minutes before.
Yeah, so we can adjust it to the next meeting.
Exactly, so you can get everybody seated and settle down and have time to get an official meeting going.
Well, if y'all are agreeable to that, then I'll schedule it. I'll also send an invite out to council so that any of the council members that are able to make it can also be a part of that. I know that there's a number of them that are really interested in this code and its changes.
And I mean, but I do think what you said second, that I think we should go ahead and hold the public hearing.
Yeah.
But I think we should in our mind look at the continuance, because there's a lot of, I mean, I know we've talked a lot, but this map has changed since the one I looked at. Some things y'all had, I don't know if this is printed correctly, but some of them aren't on here.
Well, the maps they got, there's 3 maps that are out there, and I think maybe that's important to explain a little bit, because each map tells a little bit of a different story.
So those maps be identified or what maps those are?
Yeah, so that by looking at the key, you can see the different things that are shown. So the one that you have in front of you just shows the commercial zones that are changing from one zone to another. The one that is posted here, the large one, is showing what those changes are from and to.
But we don't have that map.
That map didn't make it in your packet, but it was attached to your agenda.
That's the confusion. I see what you're saying.
You need to title these, whatever you've got.
But there's tracks. The only reason I'm saying that is we're gonna all have, and if you have time to visit with some before and you analyze it some more, there's some tracks, for example, the Crush liquor store, which we know it's zone C2, but there's like a 50-foot sliver that's owned by him that's still zone residential.
Right.
That needs to be changed on here, which.
Yeah, and I think I'd actually probably right now encourage that kind of conversation, that we want to be one-on-one or over the phone or electronically to get a lot of that ironed out. We can. I'm totally up for that. And me or Holden or both of us can sit down with anybody that has those kinds of thoughts, and we can kind of work through that. Because really, the more we can work through that before the workshop or the public hearing,
Exactly.
whatever it is, that's less we have to do during that time.
Because I want to get it right.
Yeah.
I don't want to just say, let's approve it and then have 5 other properties that we got to come back and we discover. But, another example is the Bessent's storage facility. It's all built out. It's zone residential.
Right.
I mean,
You talk about on Spring Hill?
well, Perkin Lake and behind Crush Lake.
Yeah.
And you just get to looking around, there's a lot of, sir?
No, sorry.
We've been on long enough, we've seen a lot of things that come up that should have already been changed to correct zoning, and it has not.
Well, and they're operating their new facilities, at some point, they're gonna have to come in when they get a loan or something happens and their title
Yeah.
work doesn't check out, so.
Either they come in for a redevelopment, or they do something to their building at some point and we catch it, or the bank catches it at some point. Then usually when the bank catches it is when we're in the tight spot. So it's better to go ahead and catch it now, so we don't have to go back and rush through those processes later.
So the maps we've kind of marked up as we've been keeping up, just get with you before that workshop, y'all will, if there are things that need to be changed, you'll change them on that map for that
Yeah.
workshop.
Yeah, and hopefully we can make those changes so that in time for that workshop, so that what we send out to the workshop is the most up-to-date map we can have. Obviously, we have to make changes before or after that, we can do that.
What date are you proposing?
It'd be the same date as the planning commission meeting, which is June 8th. So doing it before that planning commission meeting. Because this is a special one that's less than 1 month.
I was gonna say, that's, what, 3 weeks?
Mhm.
Almost there.
No, 2 weeks. 3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little over 2 weeks right now, I think.
And y'all have it done by then, and then notify everybody?
Yeah,
Public hearing and everything?
Yeah, so we're just going through the regular public hearing process for that, as far as notifications. And then, yeah, we can probably do a little bit extra outreach to make sure that people are aware that, hey, we're doing this. And,
I would just recommend like that when there's this commercial,
this is commercial parcels with changes, so the with changes is showing,
That's all that you have highlighted.
yeah, so this is the one that specifically shows what you're changing, what zones you're changing from and to. What you are now and what you're going to.
you just need to put it on the pages so correctly and make sure we get all the pages.
Yeah, I think the deal with the different maps is, depending on what you're looking for, what you're trying to analyze, each one does a little bit better job of telling you that story. So, you know, one of the ones that you got in your packet, this one shows all of the ones that are being changed. So if this one, if it's not highlighted, it's not being changed. And then, of course, you got one of the current zoning maps.
That should be noted somewhere on the document.
I think there's one that's the one that's the proposed changes.
Yes.
That's a good map to look at.
Yeah, that's the best map.
Because it's not as confusing as
Is that map down there
No,
you got on the
no.
floor?
it is. No, oh, I don't know.
It was the map that was a part of your packet, your digital packet on the agenda.
I just looked at that and assumed before
Yeah.
you explained.
You need much clarification, because if I just looked at this, I would not known what you just said on the new commercial zone city of Bryant.
Yeah.
What it's changing, I just
We
said,
can-
this is what it's doing, 1, 2, and 3.
We can do a better job with our titles. I know it's a really complicated, it can become a really complicated conversation when talking about the different zonings and what's happening, what property, what groups of property. So I think that's why we try to develop the different maps like we do.
Great job.
And Colton's pretty good at making maps.
I think, but the one that you say the proposed zone, is that it, Colton?
Yes, this is the one that's proposed. It shows the changes. So which ones changed from C1 to C2.
Can you zoom that in so that some people can see it?
Yep.
Twix Snickers.
And you know, you can't see under my maps.
Hey, I bet we did long enough. So the blue is what?
The blue is C2 to C3 changes. I believe the yellow is C1 to C2. The red is going to be C2 to C1.
And just as a reminder, you know, the big thing that this does is it creates a C3 zone. And the C3 zone is basically your interstate zone. So there's going to be certain uses that just get depicted along that interstate. And that's what's being shown there in the blue, is going to that interstate zone.
You'll have those uses during the workshop.
Yes, and all those uses are talked about in the packet that actually has the code in it. So the map's one part of it, and then the actual code, the other part of it. One thing that's, I would say, pretty awesome, you can call the code awesome, is the listing of the definitions of the different types of uses. That's something right now our code just has a list of uses, and then you have to interpret what that use is. And some of them are quite outdated. So this has a really updated version of that, and has a really good description for each single use. So there'll still be stuff outside of that, but it will be limited. And then it's got a really nice use table that shows the different uses, and then whether they're permitted, not permitted, or if they're required to have a conditional use permit. So, you know, I think that CU permit is something that we've used in the residential side of it, that I think has been a good tool for some of the residents and surrounding different properties that are being developed to have, just to get further input on some of those more sensitive uses next to sensitive areas. I think we can do an even better job of that, of moving forward through our commercial code. So all that's listed out there. It also, we do a little modification of our coverages and our widths and our setbacks.
Still concerned with that C2 interior residential 2 times. I've looked at a few of the C3s, and you kept the 50-foot setback. And most of them do, but there are still some areas where I think you're gonna have, the things have been rezoned to C2, and now you're making it to where it has a 30-foot setback instead of a 50-foot setback, correct?
Yeah, C2 is going to be one of our more complicated zones because there's some of the lots are different in nature. That's going to be C2 right now is our catch-all,
Yeah.
it seems like, and it's going to probably continue to be where the majority of the city lies is in C2. So it's going to be one of the more complicated ones to work out.
I mean, I think it's workable. I liked, the C3 catches most of that,
Yeah.
where the 50-foot applies, but there's
And-
still a few places where that will come into play. You know what I'm talking about there,
Yeah.
where it's your setback against residential is 2 times your interior, which typically it's 50 feet.
Right.
But, I mean, on one hand, I think that's good, except we sat here and told people it was 50 feet in several public hearings over the last 15 years for me, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's important to keep with, obviously, what the expectation is, and, you know, sort of the direction we're headed, if that's the direction we need to head. And, you know, I think it's something that obviously we can modify slightly as we move forward, but, you know, the last code, you know, had that residential buffer, and I think what it's trying to do is do a cleaner job of describing the residential buffer.
I get it. But we're also alternating that
Yeah.
classification.
Yeah, certainly.
The only other question I had on the proposed changes, this public hearing, you're just administratively changing commercial to commercial, but you're still accepting letters that fit the plan that are residential, currently vacant land that's residential.
Right.
If the homeowner or property owner will submit a letter requesting the change, you'll put it to the class that's on our plan.
Yeah, so we have a draft letter of that, so if you know anybody that's wanting to do that, you can give a call and we can send you that letter. And basically just them agreeing to that process and what code, what zone they're wanting to do, and then we can take that through the process. As far as administratively, we're only looking at commercial, going from one commercial zone to another. We don't want to get into the fact of depicting residential to commercial. That's a pretty large change in use.
But if it's the plan and the property owner's good with it, you're willing to accept the letter and change the map.
Yeah.
Right. And we got some down on Highway 5 and well, that,
Yeah, there's several
Yeah.
pieces.
it's on residential and commercial already. Awesome job.
It's getting there. Looks good.
It is.
Thank you for your hard work, y'all work.
Well, and just to go ahead and warn you a little bit more, now that as we were going through COVID, had some time to work on some other things, and we've been hopping back on the zoning code changes. You know, I think there's still some holes we have there that we need to fill, so I think that's what we've been doing there. I've also been working on a draft of the subdivision code. So that's a document that's outdated that I think needs to be bumped up, because another part of that is another big step that the city's looking at doing is looking at new software for the whole city, which includes what we use in the planning department, as well as citywide. I think with the right software, partnered with a good subdivision code and zoning code, we can become real effective and really fast about approving certain things that meet the code and just getting that through, but also handling things that I think meet the needs and the expectations of what the residents are. So I think I know city staff is really excited about some new software, and what that means for us.
Any other questions, comments? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sucking that bad area. This ain't your smoke cigarette.
My dad said it'll kill you. The mask.
We're talking about